You will move ahead of us and follow my direction.
Be still, you babbling bird brain. No one is interested in your state of health.
This way.
What if Doctor Who was made in America? Or as we like to call it, Doctor Who America.
This is a theory on if Doctor Who was made in the United States. A few people tried tackling this idea in various short videos, but it has never been made into an actual full series.
So, I figured we'd do that. We'll be going through each decade by doing one video per season. We are your hosts, Naughty Orchid 12.
And I'm Connor, or Greenwich Farm, so let's explore it together, starting at the very beginning. The year is 1962. Sidney Newman and Verity Lambert began development of a new sci-fi series titled Doctor Who, which was originally pitched to the BBC. Yet the show didn't interest the BBC in passing it up the idea of a time travel show on their network. So Donald Wilson decided to head to America with Sidney and Verity to pitch the show to America. The only problem was Sidney just moved to the UK and became the head of BBC Drama Television, but he would be credited, so the only ones who could actually pitch the show were Verity and Donald.
During the success of CBS's series, The Twilight Zone, producer Buck Houghton reached a pinnacle in his career when he was hired by Bill Seth at CBS to produce the first 39 episodes of Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone in its original half-hour format. When the network insisted the fourth season consist of half-long-hour shows, Buck decided it was time to move on. Donald and Verity Lambert pitched Sidney's idea for the show to CBS, to which they very liked the concept and idea, giving the show a possible chance. Plus, it came to their attention that they never had a full science fiction show on their network before. Well, unless we count Lost in Space, but that didn't air until 1965. Houghton was later hired by CBS to be a showrunner for the new series Doctor Who.
But Buck only wrote episodes and needed more help with the series than having just Donald and Verity could provide. Roger Corman was hired by CBS to help with the series after he finished his work on The Raven and X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes.
Houghton casted Burgess Meredith in the role of the Doctor, seeing as he worked with Burgess Meredith in several Twilight Zone episodes, most notably Season 1's Time Enough at Last, which convinced Houghton that Meredith was right for the role, and after CBS's suggestion, Ray Walston declined the role as he was in development of filming a TV sitcom called My Favorite Martian, in which to Meredith accepted immediately after reading the script.
The companions introduced are Susan Foreman, Joanne Smith, and Carlos Bergstein. Susan, who would be the granddaughter to the Doctor, being portrayed by Susan Pleshette after appearing in the breakout role as Prudence Bell in the 1962 movie Rome Adventure. Tippi Hedren was cast as Joanne after turning down the role of Melanie in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Earl Holliman, who was also a regular in The Twilight Zone, was also cast as Carlos, as his show, Wide Country, portraying Mitch Guthrie, was to end after only lasting one season. In addition, the TARDIS would be a phone booth, as eventually the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure would be criticized by fans claiming to be a ripoff to Doctor Who in the future.
A theme for the series was originally composed by Jerry Goldsmith, who scored multiple episodes of the television series The Twilight Zone in the pilot, but after leaving CBS, the music would be composed by Alexander Courage, known for composing music in Star Trek.
The first story is An Unearthly Child, written by Roger Corman and directed by Buck Houghton. At Eleanor Roosevelt High, two school teachers named Joanne and Carlos follow a mysterious student home to a junkyard and find the TARDIS and her crotchety grandfather, who reveals that he and his granddaughter are exiles from their own planet. Refusing to let Carlos and Joanne leave, he sets the TARDIS in flight, and the ship goes through time and space to the Stone Age.
Zar, the leader of a primitive tribe, portrayed by John Kalikos, attempts to make fire. Cal takes the Doctor back to the tribe and threatens to kill him if he does not make fire. Carlos, Joanne and Susan intervene, but the group is imprisoned in a large cave.
A young woman named Her, portrayed by Nancy Olsen, warns him that if he fails to do so, the stranger called Cal will be made leader. After exiting the TARDIS, the unnamed old man, whom Joanne and Carlos refer to as the Doctor, is ambushed by Cal when he witnesses him light a match.
With the help of the old mother, played by Frances Xavier of the Andy Griffith Show, who believes that fire will bring death to the tribe, they escape from the settlement but are intercepted and recaptured before reaching the TARDIS. Cal says they will be sacrificed if they do not make fire, while Carlos tries to start a fire. Cal enters the cave and attacks Zar, but is killed. Carlos gives a burning torch to Zar, who shows it to the tribe and is declared leader. Susan notices that placing a skull over a burning torch makes it appear alive. When the tribe enters the cave, they are faced with several burning skulls and are terrified, allowing the group to flee to TARDIS and escape through time and space to a silent and unknown forest. Unnoticed by the crew, the radiation meter rises to danger. This story would have been mostly positive towards an unearthly child. People really liked Burgess's portrayal of the Doctor and John Colicos portraying the role of Zar. The first episode was watched by 4.4 million viewers, yet a downside being it was broadcast 10 minutes late due to unexpected news report of the assassination of President Kennedy the previous day. However, the repeat of the first episode reached a larger audience of 6 million viewers.
The next story is The Daleks, written by Stephen Wyatt.
The TARDIS stands in a petrified jungle where the first Doctor tries to determine their position by taking a reading of the stars. He insists they explore a futuristic city, which they spot beyond the forest. But Carlos and Joanne are not convinced. In the forest, someone touches Susan's shoulder. The Doctor does not believe her. Later, a box of vials is found outside the TARDIS. The Doctor claims the fluid link of the TARDIS is running low on mercury, a ruse he later admits to, forcing the crew to travel to the city in search of more mercury.
Joanne becomes separated from her colleagues in the city and is threatened by an unseen creature with a metal arm. Before long, the entire crew is captured by unseen creatures operating tank-like machines, the Daleks. Susan is eventually sent to retrieve anti-radiation drugs from the TARDIS, after the Doctor realizes this is what the box contained. Susan encounters a second species, the Falls, who used to be at war with the Daleks. The Fall who left the drugs revealed he encountered her in the forest. Susan attempts to broker peace between the two groups, and while it appears to work, the Daleks eventually betray the Falls, opening fire on them at what was supposed to be a peaceful exchange of food. The Daleks attempt using the anti-radiation drugs, but discover that they are fatal to Daleks. They conclude that Daleks need radiation to survive and decide to bombard the atmosphere with more radiation. In the ensuing chaos, the Doctor and his companions escape with the Falls and learn their version of the history of their planet. They also learn that the Falls are avowed pacifists. They are unable to leave Skaro. However, as the fluid link has been taken by the Daleks, in order to save them from the Daleks, the TARDIS crew convinces the Falls of the importance of aggression and warfare, and manages to lead the Falls in a successful attack against the Daleks. At the end, it is believed the Dalek race has been destroyed. When their power supply is knocked out, the TARDIS crew leaves Skaro, but an explosion in the TARDIS knocks them out.
The story is the first introduction to the all-time foe, the Daleks, claiming to be the scariest and greatest enemy to the Doctor of all time. Each part is split into 7 episodes, and we start to get some character development on the companions and the Doctor. This would have also guest starred Looney Tunes voice actor Mel Blanc, being first introduced as the voice of the Daleks until eventually being cast as their regular voice for the series. Fritz Weaver portrayed Termesius, the leader of the Files, and said that this episode was a good reunion for him and Meredith, since the two had worked together in The Obsolete Man.
All in all, this story out of this season would have been the best, gaining popularity of additional million viewers watched by the following 2 weeks, and the final 2 episodes reached 10.4 million by the end of the serial. The show's overall audience had increased by 50%.
The next story is The Edge of Destruction, written by Montgomery Pittman. The Doctor traces the fall of the ship to a broken spring in the fast return switch, which has been struck down, sending them further back in time than intended. Yet a strange explosion has knocked the TARDIS into a void, having the companions knocked out and lashing out at each other. Yet the strange events the four have been experiencing, where the TARDIS attempts to warn its passengers before the ship is destroyed.
The Doctor, while attempting to correct the TARDIS's faulty navigation circuits, causes a small explosion. The Doctor, Joanne, Carlos, and Susan Foreman are all temporarily rendered unconscious. When they wake, Carlos and Susan appear to have slight cases of amnesia, and everyone begins to act strangely. The travelers are becoming suspicious of each other's motives, and the Doctor accuses Carlos and Joanne of sabotage, fearing that they have been taken over by some alien force, or that they have intentionally sabotaged the TARDIS to force the Doctor to return them to 1963. He drugs Joanne and Carlos, unknowing that Carlos is also suspicious and has not taken the drink given to him. The Doctor attempts to explore the problem without interference. Gradually, it becomes clear that the strange events are an attempt by the TARDIS itself to warn the crew that something is wrong. Joanne's clue gathering forces the Doctor to trace the problem to a broken spring in the fast return switch. The malfunction is causing the TARDIS to head back to the beginning of time. The strange events were just attempts by the TARDIS to warn the passengers before the ship is destroyed. Fixing the switch brings everything back to normal. Although the day is saved, Joanne is still affected by the Doctor's harsh words earlier. The Doctor apologizes and admits that he was wrong about Joanne and Carlos. The story closes with the TARDIS materializing on a snowy landscape where Susan sports a giant footprint in the snow. This story was commissioned as a filler episode, but in case the show was not renewed beyond the approved 13 weeks, Roger wrote the scripts in 2 days based on an idea he had developed during the show's formative weeks. He sought to explore the characters in more depth, as well as the facets of the TARDIS. The serial premiered with 10 million viewers, maintaining the figures from the previous story, and received generally positive responses. The CBS program board, however, voiced concerns regarding to a scene in which Susan used scissors as a weapon, noting that it violated code. The serial received print adaptations as well as home media releases. The next story is Marco Polo, written by Roger Corman. The TARDIS, badly damaged, lands in the Pamir Mountains of the Himalayas in 1289, and the crew are picked up by Marco Polo, portrayed here by Raymond Burr, in his caravan on its way to a fabled Silk Road to see Emperor Kublai Khan, played by Carl Swinson. The story concerns the First Doctor, his granddaughter, and the teachers Carlos and Joanne, and their attempts to thwart the machinations of Tegana, played by Chuck Howard, who attempts to sabotage the caravan along with its travels through the Pamir Plateau and across the treacherous Gobi Desert, and ultimately to assassinate Kublai Khan in Peking. So this story would have been praised, with good social and political commentary in regards to war, including guest stars Carl Swinson, Raymond Burr, and Chuck Hayward, as well as the story itself, as the mysteriousness of the villains in the episode. However, some felt the plot was stretched thin for only 2 episodes. The next story is The Keys of Marinus, written by Jerry Soule. The Doctor and his friends have an extremely limited amount of time to locate real murders of the 4th key before heading off for a final confrontation with the Void. So, The first Doctor and his granddaughter Susan and her teachers, Carlos and Joanne, arrive on a small island on the planet Marinus, where they meet Arbiton, portrayed by Henry Travers, keeper of the conscience of Marinus, a vast computer developed as a justice machine which kept law and order across the entire planet. Arbiton explains that the society of Marinus is in danger, as the void humanoid creatures are protected by amphibian-like black rubber wetsuits, are seeking to enter the tower to take control of the conscience. To prevent this, the conscience requires 5 keys, and Arbiton concurs the Doctor and his friends to gather them by placing a force field around the TARDIS. As they teleport to the city of Morphaton, Arbiton is stabbed to death by a Void that has gained access to the tower. In Morphaton, the crew are impressed by the luxuries of the city. However, Joanne soon realizes that they have been hypnotized, and that Morphaton is actually a place of dirt and squalor. The creatures who govern Morphaton ordered Joanne's death. But Joanne escapes and hides in the city, where she makes contact with a slave girl named Sabitha, played by Grace Lee Whitney, who has been blamed for Joanne's awakening and sentenced to death. Joanne notices one of the keys around her neck. They escape and destroy the creatures, freeing the subjects of the city. Another slave, Altos, played here by Dick Van Dyke, remembers that he was also sent by Arbiton, and he and Sabitha join the Doctor and his crew on their quest. While the Doctor continues to the city of Millennius, the others search in a dangerous screaming jungle. After triggering a trap, Barbara is lost in an ancient temple in the jungle, while Carlos remains at the temple to search for the key. Sabitha and Susan continue to the next location. Carlos finds Joanne in the temple, where they discover an aged scientist, Darius, played by Edmund O'Brien, who reveals the location to the next key before dying. Carlos and Joanne retrieve the key and teleport to an icy wasteland. They meet the duplicitous Trapper Vaser, played by Francis D. Wolfe, who steals the keys. Ian and Altos confront Vaser and force him to take them to the ice caves, where they find Sabitha and Susan with mechanized ice soldiers and discover the next key frozen in a block of ice. As they flee, Vaser takes Susan hostage, but an ice soldier kills him and the group escapes. At the next location, Carlos is accused of the murder of Eperin, a friend of Altos. As Carlos' trial, the Doctor returns and postpones the trial while he gathers evidence. Susan is kidnapped as a hostage to persuade the Doctor to stop investigating. The kidnapper has persuaded the judges to find Carlos guilty. However, Susan is found bound and gagged, and the plot is uncovered. The Doctor finds the final key, hidden in a murder weapon, and Carlos is freed. The travelers return to Arbiton's island, where Altos and Sabitha have been held prisoner by Yartek, Arbiton's killer, and the 4 keys have been seized. The Doctor frees Altos and Sabitha and unmasks the Void. Carlos gives Yartek a false key found in the screaming jungle. When Yartek places the key in a conscience, the machine explodes and he's killed along with the occupying Void. The Doctor, Susan, Joanne, and Carlos flee the tower with Altos and Sabitha before the growing blaze overtakes the ancient structure. So this story would be mixed. Although as Fame's claim the stereo was to show's low point, nothing but the introduction of a trial scene represented too rushed, and the enemy the Void just seemed like a really forgetful villain. Although some fans liked guest stars Henry Travers, known to portray Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life as Arbiton. And some fans were shocked about Dick Van Dyke getting a guest appearance as Arlos, as he was mostly seen on the comedic side in roles such as Mary Poppins. Got to try something different, although fans would not see the last of Dyke of Doctor Who, as fans would eventually consider casting him as a second incarnation, along with other guest stars including Grace Lee Whitney off of The Rifleman, and eventually in Star Trek as Janice Rand, and Edmund O'Brien off of 1949's DOA. Susan Pusheen, however, was displeased with the portrayal of Susan in the serial, as she felt she was written like a child, describing her character as pathetic. The next story is The Censorites, written by George Clayton Johnson.
The TARDIS crew land on a spaceship where they meet crew members Captain Maitland,
Played by Jeffrey Hunter,
and Carol Richmond, Alona Rogers, who are on an exploration mission from Earth and are orbiting the Sensphere. However, its inhabitants, the Censorites, refuse to let them leave orbit. The Censorites visit and stop the travellers from leaving while sending them on a collision course, which the First Doctor diverts. The travellers then meet Carol's fiancé, John, whose mind has been broken by the Censorites. Susan Foreman's telepathic mind is flooded with the many voices of the Censorites, who remain scared of the humans and are trying to communicate with her. Meanwhile, the Doctor calculates that the Censorites attack the human craft because John, Stephen Dartnell, a mineralogist, had discovered a vast supply of molybdenum on the Sensphere. Susan reports that the Censorites wish to make contact with travellers, asking the crew to board the Sensphere, and reveal that a previous Earth expedition caused them great misery. The Doctor asks the Censorites to return the TARDIS's lock in exchange for visiting the Sensphere to speak with their leader, Ian Chesterton. Susan, Carol and John join him. On their journey to the Sensphere, the party learns that the previous visitors from Earth exploited the Sensphere for its wealth. Half of them stole the spacecraft, which exploded on takeoff. The Sensorite Council is divided over the issue of inviting the party to the Sensphere. Some members plot to kill them on arrival, but others believe that the humans can help with the disease that is currently killing many Sensorites. When their first plot is foiled by the other Censorites, they continue to plot in secret. John's mind is eventually unblocked. Ian contracts the disease that has blighted the Censorites and told that he will die soon. It is revealed that he was actually poisoned by the drinking water.
What's that?
Antidote. To what? The poison you just drank, Dr.
The Doctor finds the aqueduct and creates a cure for Ian. The plotting Censorites capture and impersonate a Sensorite leader, the Second Elder. Meanwhile, investigating the aqueduct, the Doctor finds strange noises and darkness. He sees and removes deadly nightshade, the cause of the poisoning, but while returning, meets an unseen monster. Susan and Ian find him unconscious but unharmed. On recovering, he tells of his suspicion that some Censorites are plotting to kill them. The plotting Censorites kill the Second Elder, and one of them replaces him in his position. John tells the others that he knows the second plotter, but he is now too powerful, so the Doctor and Ian go down to the aqueduct to find the prisoners. Elsewhere, a mysterious assailant abducts Carol. Susan, John and Barbara Wright eventually find and release her. On discovering the tamper tools, they go into the aqueduct to rescue the Doctor and Ian. The leader discovers the plotters a little while later. Ian and the Doctor discover that the monsters were actually the survivors of the previous Earth mission, and they had been poisoning the Censorites. Their deranged commander, John Bailey, leads them to the surface, where they are arrested by the Censorites. The Doctor and his party return to the city, pleading clemency for the prisoners. The leader of the Censorites agrees and sends them back with Maitland, John and Carol to Earth for treatment. This story would have been mixed.
Although some fans thought it veers from sinister to unintentionally hilarious, with everyone fluffing their lines, some of them even said it was a bravura performance of Jeffrey Hunter. Though some people thought the episode was just a classic piece of 60s sexism. And some even believe that the Censorites were a pretty decent villain. The final story is The Revolutionary, written by John Meston. The Doctor arrives in Lexington right before the show is heard around the world. The Doctor meets Paul Revere, played by a young Robert Reed. who fans may know as the dad from the Brady Bunch, as he's announcing the regulars are coming and the crew try to barricade the door against the British. No shots are fired, but when the British arrive with the Doctor, instead of trying to solve things as peacefully as possible, considering this is the start of the Revolutionary War, he states that whilst he does somewhat understand British taxes, it would be best to try and treat the Americans more fairly. Revere agrees with the Doctor. However, other Americans are not receptive and a fight breaks out, in which the Doctor is taken prisoner on suspicion of inciting a riot. He is taken before the leader of the Redcoats, Commander William Ho, as portrayed by Patrick Troughton. Yes, eager viewer, the second Doctor is a main antagonist for a Doctor Who story, who tells the Doctor that the Americans need to be dealt with whatever force is necessary, and orders him to be taken away to be put on trial later. Back in town, Carl, Susan, and Joanne want to look for the Doctor and get assistance from Revere and his friend Hugh Winifred, played by Tim Holt, who is also Carlos's great-great-grandfather. They man a search party with a couple of other Americans and make their way over to the British camp whilst the Redcoats are looking over plans of what to do if the Americans keep on resisting. Susan and Hugh continue on into the camp to look to where the Doctor is being kept, and upon finding him tell him that they're here to rescue him and to come as quickly as quietly as possible. Upon getting out of his cell, thanks to some sneaky pickpocketing from Susan and Hugh opening the door, the Doctor attempts to escape, only for his foot to be spotted by a Redcoat, who raises the alarm. The bulk of the remaining story would be spent with the search party running from the British and doing their best to hide until they get back to Lexington. There, when the British arrive, they find the streets largely empty, aside from one or two heckling Americans, played by comedy duo Marty Allen and Steve Rossi. When one of them asks him where the Doctor is, they mock him and call for others to prevent the Redcoats from getting to the Doctor. One thing leads to another, and as the Redcoats attempt to restore order, both an American and a Redcoat end up pulling out guns and near simultaneously fire. During all the commotion, Revere manages to successfully get the Doctor and Co. back to the TARDIS, and the Doctor tells him that both his and Revere's actions will start a chain of events that will allow the Americans to fairness they so desire, so long as he fights for what he believes in and leaves Revere to join the Americans in the Battle of Lexington and Concord. This story would have been positively received for its showing of the beginning of the Revolutionary War, though it would in most areas be more historically accurate, but it would have been heavily criticized for its pacing, with many believe its story could have been better told in 3 or 4 episodes rather than 6. It also guest stars Tim Holt, who appeared as Fritz Robinson in Disney's Swiss Family Robinson. Made a slight error because there's 2 different Swiss Family Robinsons, and the one he starred in was in 1940, not the Disney one. So, that's it for Season 1 of Doctor Who America. Next time we will go over Season 2 of Doctor Who America. Till then, we will see you then.
Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Johnny B.
I have to go potty.
All the chicks. Really?
Come on, did you fall in?
Oh yeah.
Has anyone seen my hair removal cream?